Hey y'all, I'm Lauren and welcome to Cantina Cast. You may notice that I have rearranged my whole recording area. I used to do my recordings and my videos just sitting in my office chair, and I got sick and tired of that. I figured if I'm going to sit here and blab to myself for like 45 minutes to an hour, I might as well be comfortable while I'm doing it. So that is why now there is this you're in my living room vibe story time setup. And I really love how it turned out. This is my first video that I'm recording with my new setup. I did the Cantina Cast live stream a few days ago with this setup and I really enjoyed it. It was just so much more pleasant, feeling like, I'm sitting here chilling, being comfortable while talking about Star Wars. So yeah, this is probably how it's going to look for a while now. But with that aside, today I am talking about Darth Vader Black, White, and Red. What this is a 4-issue comic miniseries around Darth Vader. And what the Black, White, and Red thing is about is Marvel does this series for different characters. Like, for example, like they've done it with some superhero characters before. And it's the kind of like the signature thing about this series is it's all of the art is just black, white, and red. It's just those three colors. They bring out some really incredible writers and artists to showcase their talents when they do these series. So it's kind of just like a cool little thing that Marvel has done with a handful of their characters. And so Vader got his black, white, and red run a few months back. So these 4 issues did come out a while ago, but I felt like now would actually be a good time to talk about this comic because they just released the bind up of all of the black, white, and red issues. And it's a super cool bind up. Like, this is different than your typical comic bind up. I mean, you may be able to tell it's absolutely huge. Like, it definitely stands out on the shelf, that's for sure. But I just was like really struck by the way that by the presentation of this book. So I felt like it was actually worth showing on the video. And when you're looking at this book in person, the thing that really stands out the most is the art. The art is just so striking in this. I feel like a lot of times the Star Wars comic art is pretty good, but in this series, they really went all out. And there's some really incredible artists that contributed to this series. So if you're into art, if you're into comics as an art form, then this is definitely going to be worth checking out because they really went all out for this one. And even though it's a mini series, there's actually a lot of issues in it. So there's the 4 issues which are written by Jason Aaron, which are kind of like the main story. And then there's also a bunch of kind of side stories going on, which are just one-off, just standalone issues written by different writers. You've got your 4 issues by Jason Aaron, who Jason Aaron has written this character before and done an amazing job at it. There's that quote that has become so iconic from the Vader Down series, which is, "All I'm surrounded by is fear and dead men." That's a Jason Aaron line. So if you know that quote, then you know something by Jason Aaron. So you know that Jason Aaron did a great job with this miniseries, and so did all of the writers that wrote the standalone issues as well. I do want to say, if you're not caught up on the main Darth Vader comic series, the long one that's been going on for quite some time, don't worry about that. You don't have to be caught up to be able to enjoy this series. And I know because I'm behind on Darth Vader. More behind than I would really like to be. But I was still able to follow this just fine. It's its own story. It's a separate thing. So don't worry about it if you're behind. It's okay. You can still check out this series and have a great time with it. So I am going to just go over the plot of the main 4 issues. The side issues, I'm not going to talk about those just because there's actually so many of them. So I'm just going to keep the discussion to the main 4 Jason Aaron issues, but the side issues that are the standalone ones, those are really great too. Those all were very compelling, had some amazing art. I really can't say enough good things about them. But the Jason Aaron storyline in this series was called Hard Shutdown. And the way that this storyline starts out is that Darth Vader shows up and he's going to meet someone who supposedly has some information for him about Dr. Senval. Dr. Senval is the doctor who made Vader what he is. He was the one who did all of the cybernetics in Revenge of the Sith and actually created what we see when we see Darth Vader. We soon find out that Vader was lured here under false pretenses by Dr. Senval's son, and he actually tells Vader once he gets there that Senval is dead, and he seems like he has some sort of a plan for something that he's going to do to Vader. So after a fight ensues, Senval's son actually manages to shut down Vader's suit to where he can no longer move at all. He's completely immobilized. So he takes Vader prisoner, and it sounds like they're going to just torture him and do a bunch of stuff to him because he has a grudge against Vader, because after his father made Vader what he was, that was kind of like his greatest work. And so he was always trying to replicate what he did on his son. So as you can imagine, his son went through awful torture for a very long time. You can see in the images of the comic that looks like he has some cybernetic things that have been done to him, and he hates Vader because of it, because his father was always trying to top that, and he was using his own son to do it. So his plan is that he wants to torture Vader like he was. But what ends up happening is that even though Vader is completely immobilized physically, they don't take into account that he still has full usage of the Force. And so there's this one part where this guy comes in with a chainsaw and is about to start using it on Vader, but Vader uses the Force, takes the chainsaw out of the guy's hand, and is like throwing it around the room, cutting people up. It's pretty gruesome. But he just kills everybody in the room with his mind because, of course, he's Vader. He can do that. And so this ends up creating a big problem for Senval's son and everybody else involved, because they're like, we can't even go in that room now because he's just going to kill us. So now we just have him in there immobilized. He can't move, and we can't let him out because then he'll come kill us all. And we can't go in there either because then he'll still kill us all. So they totally just underestimated Vader with this whole plan that they came up with. One thing that they try to address this problem is they have fighters coming in actual ships that are shooting at the building that Vader is being held in. But Vader is still able to use the Force to sabotage those fighter ships to where they crash. And even though there is still an explosion in the building, Vader is able to just completely walk out of it. Because once there was the explosion, it took down the systems that were keeping him immobilized in his suit. So once that was over, he's able to use his suit again, and he is not really affected by the explosion physically. And of course, he also has the dark side that's probably motivating him too. And so he just stands up and walks out of this fiery wreckage of this building. And Senval's son is disturbed, but also very impressed and moved by the fact that Vader was able to not only sabotage the ships to his advantage, but also survive the explosion as well. And of course, once Vader walks out, he's killing everybody again. And when he faces Senval's son, his name is Sin. And I feel like I have to just read this quote direct because it was such a great quote. But when he faces Sin, he says, "You fail because in the end, you are nothing more than your father's son and a few spare parts. I am no man's son." I mean, another great Jason Aaron line. I love that because at this point in Vader's character journey, where he's at, he feels like attachments have done nothing but get him in trouble. And even though this story, it's a pretty short story, it only covers a very small span of time, but I just feel like this line really hits home in terms of Vader's character, what his motivations are, what he feels like his weaknesses are versus what his weaknesses actually are. All of that, I feel like this simple line, "I am no man's son," and him saying that as that's a strength of his, which he believes it to be at this time, that just, I feel like it just has such an impact, just such a simple line which really just says a lot about this character. And I just love that writing. And it also just hits home even more the fact that with these Vader comics, we're seeing Vader in his prime. And so he's in his physical prime in terms of the damage that he's able to do. He's also in his prime with how powerful he is with the Force. And with these comics, what comes with that is we're also seeing Vader at the peak of his anger and resentment. So I am no man's son being a plus. That's something that I just feel like is so fitting for Vader to see it that way at this time in his life. So yeah, I mean, that's just, to me, that just says a lot about Jason Aaron's skill as a writer. All it takes is a few lines, a few words really, and you just hit this character just nail right on the head. And then after this, what Vader ends up doing is he immobilizes Sinful's son, with the Force. So he does the exact same thing to Sin that was done to him just a few minutes ago. And he's immobilized with the Force, and he leaves him in this pit where there's these creatures that come out and eat him. So he goes out in a pretty horrible way. And so he ends up showing this guy, like, you think you're above me because you don't have the dependence on the cybernetics that I have, but actually we're pretty much in the same boat, and I'm the one that ended up living to tell the tale. And that is how the Jason Aaron portion of this series leaves off. So I have to reiterate that my explanation of the plot and just my own general thoughts about this series, I really feel like it doesn't do it justice, because for me, the real impact of this series was the art. The writing was incredible. I just gushed about the Jason Aaron line, but I feel like when you're actually seeing this incredible art that's supporting this incredible storytelling that's done by some of these writers in this series, it really just makes it so much more incredible than just your typical sort of comic. Like, this is really something special in my opinion. So let me know if you're planning on picking this one up. I feel like if you're a fan of comics and just visual storytelling, I feel like this one's going to be a must read for you, honestly. And if you've already read it, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. And thanks so much for joining, guys. I hope that y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye, y'all.